see you guys in the dark.
It was around the beginning of the year, and I really liked this girl, which I had been talking about for a while. In early 2014, everyone and their mother were into Pokemon X and Y. And even though I liked Pokemon quite a bit, I hadn't played in the main games in a while, and spent most of the time ranting about how Game Freak was an asshole because Ruby remakes weren't out. Oh boy, what a grand statement to think about now. Anyway, so this girl and I, her name's Morgan, we agreed to meet in a Pokemon tournament in Florida, along with a couple of mutual friends. And we've had a pretty fun time. I got to the convention center, which in our case was a shitty hotel with very little hygiene and small airspace. If you want to get stereotypical, there were Mamadoras everywhere, and generally odd-looking neckbeards, sweating endlessly, drinking and spitting as they spoke into water buckets, contaminating on the tables, and then shaking their clammy palms, their hands almost tan, on the mere heat of breath. Frankly, it was disgusting, but tolerable. When I got there, the first person I saw was my friend Jerry. I had known him for a good 5 years. He's got long brown hair, and he's generally enthusiastic, very charismatic, but today he was quiet. I didn't really think much about it, but I suspect it had something to do with how volatile the whole place felt. Like me, he wasn't participating in the tournament, only spectating. We greeted each other, and the first thing we did was try to spot our friends, and the girl, Morgan. Our friends who were actually participating were Flax, another friend of mine I'd known for something like 3 or 4 years. She's a blonde Pokemon breeding genius. The girl pretty much freaking knew Pokemon front and back. It was really surprising how knowledgeable she was, but she wasn't annoying or interrupting about it. I know her more because I have frequent Skype conversations with her and Jerry. Serena, who was virtually speaking Flax's girlfriend. She hung out with her all the time. They were soulmates. She had this dark hair, and I like to say she's a pretty objective person who tells you the other side of any story. I don't agree with a lot of her opinions, but she's a lot of fun to talk to. I had been friends with her for around 4 years now or so. And then Jerry spotted Morgan, who for the record I had only talked to through the internet. She had this short, pixie-like dark hair. She was also adorably small, smaller than me. Although, then again, I'm 6'4", and she's 5'4". So it's probably a matter of perspective. In simple terms, Morgan's a pretty hot girl for my standards. I waved, and she waved back, smiling at me. She was sitting on one of the long Pokemon tables with another guy facing her. He was a chubby dude, with visible acne and stalking dark eyes. Young, but visibly tired. Almost like a starving snake looking for meat he can't quite eat. If I remember correctly, Morgan mentioned he was around 15, but at my first sight, I thought he was a lot older. Almost like an unkept, lost, abandoned dog. Small and unwanted. Not at all something you want to look at, but something that's collected age, dust. After the first round, all three came to us along with the chubby guy who introduced himself as Morgan. For convenience, I will refer to the girl Morgan as Morgan and the chubby Morgan as CM. We all greeted each other, and as I saw CM, I thought he was a friend of Morgan's. Probably from a long time who had been playing and talking with Morgan for a while maybe. Morgan looked a little uncomfortable with the dude, but that's probably because he was pretty bizarre and socially awkward. Keep in mind, I'm pretty socially awkward, but this guy is actually above my level. He was quiet, and he commented always at the weirdest time, with long, concentrated stares at people, and his mouth slightly opening every now and then, always dry and almost disconnected from what he actually said. Jerry and the rest of us thought he was also a friend of Morgan's, so we were generally pretty accepting. We allowed him to come with us and talk with us. The rounds of Pokemon went on during the day, and we'd have our trivial breaks. breathing out of the Neckbeard meme shack and talking, lying down, occasionally having some nice moments of talking about Digimon instead. Maybe the third round, we decided to go out for lunch. We walked to a McDonald's, maybe a good 15 to 20 minutes away, and ordered. CM followed us every step of the way, and Morgan and I talked together, about each other, about who we are and what we do. I really liked Morgan and knew we'd be pretty good friends. We reached the McDonald's, which was a pretty shitty one, as McDonald's could go. The AC was pretty bad, and I got really sweaty, and the wait was a little long, considering others used the place as a location. All the way back, the four of us walk back to the hotel with our food, and again, CM follows us back. Again, at this point, I suspect nothing. We sit down, eat pretty damn quickly, talk a little bit about Pokemon strategy, and then we clean up and wait for the next round. Except right before the round starts, Morgan sets me aside, and we have a short conversation. He followed us all the way to lunch. He? I don't really know who she's talking about. Again, I thought CM was just a friend of hers. Who? CM. CM followed us all the way here. I thought he was a friend of yours. No, he's just this guy I met while they were sorting us out for the tournament. Since for some reason they arranged us by our first name, I absolutely do not know CM. I partly froze. I was terrified, in all honesty. A stranger had been stalking us, clinging to us for the past couple hours, and I had completely dismissed the possibility of the occurrence. But I tried to keep my cool, relatively speaking. I recall somewhere in the conversation, Morgan said, I was trying to be really nice about it all, since I was excited about the tournament and all the new people. That's exactly what I had done too, trying to be nice. Subtle details I never noticed just to keep up expectations. I tried to mention the fact that he was a stranger to the others when I had the chance, and we began to think on how we solved the situation. A Pokemon round later, and we all sit down on a long table, and we start discussing the whole ordeal. The biggest issue was really trying not to hurt his feelings, or be really mean. It was a gamble to be forceful to something you don't know, and you don't know what they're capable of. It's difficult to think about how to even approach. And the worst part about it is not knowing if instead of leaving you alone, he'll take the offensive and do harm to you. Finally, as all of us sit on the table, CM catches up to us, like before, from his Pokemon round, greeting us and saying hi. There was an endless silence. We weren't even done talking about him, or figuring out what to do, but here he was again, and we hadn't had an idea of how to solve it. And then, the most amazing thing happens. Something that I can't forget because it makes me realize what little balls I have and what huge steel fucking balls this pretty girl has in comparison. Morgan goes, "Why are you following us?" in a straightforward, no bullshit tone. Her face was cold, determined, and as she said it, CM flinched a bit, maybe a little in fear. CM's response, "Because I can?" Response was so unsettling. I'll never forget this either. He gave a tiny grin as he said it, almost like a malevolent lecturer. Struck in this villainous climax, it never got out of my head. Because I can. I can't remember Morgan's response to that, but she was pretty relentless, trying to get the stalker out. Finally, Morgan goes, "Can you please leave?" CM stared at Morgan as she said that, as if it was all a repugnant joke. CM says, "Now?" "Can you leave?" Morgan asks again. He was waiting for a sign of vulnerability, a chance for him to stay, like maybe he could still belong. All of us were silent, leaving Morgan to what she needed to do. And CM slightly shrunk as Morgan stared at him. CM stood up. He didn't move immediately, instead staring at us briefly. Morgan kept gazing at him in a cold, eagle-like fashion, and then he walked away. I held Morgan's hand under the table, and I felt pretty relieved at what just happened. But I also had a dumb, reflective moment that maybe I was like CM, socially awkward and lonely, looking for friends. I tried to express myself, remembering that only a few years ago I could have been that dude, incapable of socializing with others without inserting myself uncomfortably into strangers. Coming to the end of the tournament, It got more uncomfortable as CM stuck himself to the corners, staring at us at every opportunity. At one point, Flax and CM were sat approximately 2 seats from each other, and CM leaned forward towards Flax, just repeating, "It's you. I can't believe it's you." We all left the tournament by the 8th or 9th round, something like that, and by the time we did, I eventually was the last person out. I was waiting outside for my ride, and I see CM out of the hotel, with what seems to be his father. His father pays little attention to me. He seems like an okay guy, but CM just keeps his eyes locked on me as he walks off into the distance. He doesn't stop looking until he's out of my view, going into a car. And I think, even driving away, he was still staring. I haven't seen the guy since, and me and Morgan remain good friends, and we talk about this strange encounter every now and then. The creepy guy is always there. I like to think he lives in a town pretty far away from where I live in Florida, so I never have to see him or think about being afraid that way again. Every time I go out somewhere in public, somewhere with so many people, the possibility seems to come back. What if he's here, this time? What would he do if he saw me? I don't know how good of a story this is, but it was really fucking creepy to me. I have a few other stories, and my friend Flax actually has reported meeting him another time, but that's pretty much the end of it. This happened 2 years ago, in my high school junior year. I was the kind of student who would take honors, AP, everything. Wasting my goddamn time, by the way. And I was taking accelerated pre-clack so I could get into AP the next year. It was around September, November. It's the beginning of the school year when a new kid, Corbin, randomly shows up sitting in the back of my math class. At the time, the seating arrangement sat me near him, so I thought, let's be nice to the new guy, and started to just acknowledge his presence. He would ask me questions. I would politely answer, etc. Nothing special, but no one else was really doing it at the time. He wasn't the type to be immediately popular the second you move schools. And he had that classic pudgy, short, nerd look to him. Glasses, neckbeard, a rotation of 3 shirts. So I felt bad. I was never one to make friends. Wasn't popular. Wasn't that good looking. Depression made me gross as fuck. So I felt empathetic. Turns out we shared another class. AP US History. This time, Corbin sat directly in my table group. We would have to interact more in that class. So maybe he started to see me as a friendly face. I mean, being a new kid is hard, especially when everyone else has known each other for most of their lives. But that's where the problem is. I don't know what about me gave him the impression that he could confide in me about this. Love interests? But after a week or two, that's what Corbin started to do. At first, it wasn't too serious. It was saying things like, "Wow, math class is so great. What the fuck? And Miss Edgar, who was our math teacher, is such a great teacher." Like, yeah, okay. Things like that are normal to hear when you're sitting in a class full of AP nuts that want to go to Ivy League schools and become the next Stephen Hawking or whatever the fuck. But then he started really wanting to know more about Miss Edgar, asking things like, "Is Miss Edgar married?" "Yes, but we just call her MS." "And does she have kids?" "Yes. Its picture's literally right there." And then he kept saying things like, "I want to have all 6 periods of the day be math." And ugh, I don't want to leave math. Why is it such a short period? At this point, I would try to stay away from Corbin. I wouldn't talk to him. I wouldn't look at him, give signals of, "Ew, please go away," because I just had some sort of gut feeling that he liked a lot more than just math. I would run from our math classroom the minute the bell rang in an effort to keep him from catching up to me. But he would still find me and say things. I have never power walked so hard in my life, and he still somehow caught up, impressive in a way. In my history class, we eventually had to do a group project as a table group. It was me, Corbin, and 2 other girls. We had to draw some poster about the Civil War, and I was in charge of drawing most of it because for most of my life, everyone knew me as the girl who can draw. I've gone to art school for 8 years, been traditionally taught. I had to draw some sort of southerner-looking guy, and I guess to him it looked like Joseph Joestar, like the anime character from the Stardust Crusaders arc. First of all, ew. Not ew to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but ew to the fact that I just got my years of art practice whistled down to looking like an anime character. But whatever, that wasn't the problem. Problem was that Corbin not let that go. Instead of, doing actual work and helping me on the poster, all he could do for the rest of the class was just make JJBA sound effects. Like, what the fuck? The other 2 girls and I would just look at each other and then go back to doing our work, trying not to give him the attention he was so clearly wanting. He would always try to crack jokes, to no avail, when watching documentaries in U.S. history class, so it was nothing new. He would repeatedly repeat his jokes numerous times, but even the teacher wouldn't give him the time of day. But the poster thing was so painful that I actually stopped liking JJBA for a while. Only started getting back into it now, just because he was so cringy. But that's neither here nor there. Back to the main part. I eventually got sick and tired of Corbin's BS, and decided to mail both Miss Edgar and my AP history teacher, saying that I wanted to be moved as far away from him as possible in class, and have them make sure that future seating charts would reflect that. I didn't go into detail as to why I felt so uncomfortable, because what was I supposed to say? And the teachers didn't ask any questions about this. So I got my wish, and got moved to literally the opposite corners. He was in the front left corner, I was in the back right, yada yada. I would catch him staring at me a lot, but he stopped talking to me after that. Thank the Lord, right? Then I found something out that made me feel bad for Miss Edgar herself. Sometimes, when I missed class, I would go in after and make up notes and take quizzes, and I noticed he was always there. During lunch, after school, he was always just sitting there. Corbin didn't have to make up anything. He just wanted to really spend his day with Miss Edgar. And it was every day. Other kids would see him when they went in to make something up. Every day. But I would try to rationalize all of this. Obviously, he didn't make many friends, being new and all, so maybe he wanted to not sit alone during lunch, or maybe just wait a little in the classroom before his mom came to pick him up after school. And maybe Miss Edgar is the only teacher he feels comfortable around. Then suddenly, it's Valentine's Day. For me, not a special day. Never been a special day, and never will be. Just a regular, normal day. I had missed class the day before. Yes, I am a serial skipper, if you haven't noticed, and went in after school to make up a math test. Oops. Surprise! You know who it is that is there? Giving Miss Edgar a motherfucking cookie? Saying he wanted to do something special for a special someone like her, and whatnot. Some poetic lovey-dovey bullshit. Miss Edgar accepts it, which I would personally decline, since I found a black hair baked in the cookies he had brought for a math potluck once. Spoilers, he's blonde. With a slightly forced, "aw, thanks," and he finally leaves. I take my test. Remember if it did any good, but right as I was about to walk out the door, Miss Edgar asks, "Can I actually talk to you for a second, OP?" I'm like, what the fuck can this be about? I thought I was in some sort of trouble missing all of that class or something. But it turns out she wanted to ask about Corbin. She goes, "I know you didn't want to talk about why you were uncomfortable with Corbin, but I was wondering if there's anything you can tell me." I was like, oh, thank God, she noticed. And so I finally spilled the beans about how weird he was, how he seems to be infatuated with her, and how I thought she was oblivious to all of this. Miss Edgar tells me that she's known, and that she just has to put up with it for the rest of the year, unless he takes AP Calc, in which she is the only one who teaches it. Because what is there to do? She thanks me for talking with her, and the year progressed with a less amount of weirdness. I eventually started to tell other people about my interactions with Corbin, not for the sake of gossip, but because I wanted to warn people, especially the girls he tended to hover around. He would always just go up to a pair of girls and stand in between them, just watching them talk to each other, not even engaging in their conversation, just watching. That's when I found out other girls has had similar interactions with this kid. How he kept trying the whole, what if we kissed? Haha, just kidding. Unless line multiple times on multiple girls. And how he harassed this one particular girl that I guess he liked over text messages. One trend of his is that he would really take interest only in Asian girls. So he probably had some sort of yellow fever situation going on too. Senior year ended with no further bumps, and when senior year started, I walk into school and don't see Corbin anywhere. He's not in my classes or any other AP class, which is weird because he'd probably take it. Turns out he moved back to where he came from over the summer. As for me, I missed more school than I'd like to admit. I'm always one for pushing the attendance limit, but still graduated in the top 5% of my class out of 560 students. See, kids, it is possible. But just don't quote me on it. Now I'm in college, living my best life, and out of that hick town for good. As for Corbin, I better not see you ever again, dude. This happened roughly 3 years ago at a dance event for the local Burning Man community. I'd only been to Burning Man once, but I had friends who were regular burners, and they wanted to go. It sounded like a good time, just going out dancing with my friends, and it would have been if this guy hadn't decided to target me. What happened that night was honestly one of the most chilling experiences I've ever had. So I'm dressed up in burner attire, which for me at the time meant leggings and a crop top, and already buzzed when we got there. We're in this bar that has been converted into a sort of an adult playground, complete with a giant-sized McDonald's play place type ball pit in the back. We all dance for a while, and I get tired and decide to take a break near the funhouse ball pit. I hoist myself up onto the edge of it, and I remember playing around with random people who came up to me and tried to push me over the edge. For those who are unfamiliar, the burner community is like that. It's very open and accepting. Everyone hugs each other. Personal boundaries tend to be more lax. Mostly, this is a really amazing thing. People welcome complete strangers as if they were friends or family. But there are also predatory people that take advantage of the culture. Anyway, I was feeling that vibe and having harmless, PG fun with strangers in a ball pit when this man in a suit jacket and fedora, not out of place considering, comes up to me. He was around the same age as me, mid-20s, kind of short and paunchy, the Neckbeard type. I could tell he was already drunk when he started talking. He asked me if he could dance with me. Now, I'm no stranger to having to deflect drunk dudes at bars. My strategy is always to evade and avoid conflict. I say something like, maybe I'll see you out there. And at this point, he hasn't done anything out of place. He looks just like another drunk guy. I tell him I'm taking a break for a while. In response, he asks me if he can get some water. Fortunately, lit as I am, the rape prevention training I went through in college is still fresh in my mind. You never leave your beer unattended, and you never let some rando bring you a drink. Never. Also, I didn't want this guy to have a further reason to hang out next to me, so I told him I was good. Eventually, I rejoined my friends on a dance floor, and the night progressed. As I'm dancing, Fedora comes up to me again, and without saying a word, presses a half-drunk beer into my hands. I almost took a drink without even thinking about what I was doing, but as I was raising the glass to my face, I just thought, no, this is pretty weird. I remember looking at the glass in my hands and back at him, just standing there staring at me and smiling. I shook my head and handed the cup back to him. He didn't take a drink. Instead, he wandered away. I turned to my friend and said, I think that guy's trying to drug me, but he didn't hear me over the music. Fedora was gone, so I went and sat down again near the back wall of the bar. Mistake. Fedora saw me and came up to me again. This time, he had a full glass of beer in his hand, which he again offered to me. At this point, I was sure that he was trying to drug me. I said no forcefully and just stared at him. I'll never forget the look on his eyes, and then, not guilty at all, just normal looking. Neither the wrongness of what he was trying to do, or the implication that I knew he was trying to drug me had any effect on him. I walked away from him and found my friends, determined to stick next to them for the rest of the night. I didn't see him take a drink of his new beer either. At that point, I was feeling anxious, but I assumed that having been unsuccessful, he would leave me alone. I realize now I should have talked to security about this guy, but I wasn't sober at the time, and it really never occurred to me. I just wanted to forget about Fedora and salvage my night. I stick with my friend and her boyfriend, and we moved to a different room at the venue. We were all sitting together when he comes up to me again and strokes his hand down the side of my face before leaning in and kissing me on the cheek. I wish I could say I shoved him away from me, but I didn't. I just froze. I was seriously scared of this guy now, and I didn't know what to do. My friend saw how uncomfortable I was, and she grabbed my hand and pulled me away from him. I told her I thought he was trying to roofie me earlier, and I think at that point, she said that we should find the other people we came with and leave. I started walking around looking for other friends. At some point, I was alone again, and of course, Fedora walks up again. This time, I told him to get away from me and started walking away. Again, he followed me. I saw the girls' bathroom up ahead of me, and I ran for it. He ran after me, and I shouted, "Leave me alone!" I wish I had told him to fuck off and die, but there you go again. Before shutting the bathroom door in his face, fortunately, he didn't try to come in. The not empty girls' room was a barrier when he could not cross. I waited for probably 20 minutes in the bathroom before checking to see if he was still there. He wasn't. I found my friends again after that, and we left. I was still pretty naive then, having just moved to a bigger city from a small town. I thought I had experience dealing with creepy or aggressive guys. I've had men try to grope or kiss me without consent before, but no one had ever tried to obviously dose me before, and no one had been that persistent. I've learned to be meaner over the last couple of years, that I don't have to be considerate or polite to someone who's making me uncomfortable. I'm so glad I stopped before taking a drink of whatever he was trying to give me. I don't know what would have happened if I had. So yeah, fedora-wearing creeper who tried to drug me before literally chasing me into a bathroom. I hope you get caught doing that. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.